Hey guys, and welcome to Not Easy Being Geeky, the podcast where me, the host, Rachel, talks about nerdy shit. And today, we're talking about RWBY Ice Queendom. Alright guys, so today, I just want to get this out the way, and before you click away, because, I'm talking about RWBY, which is a Rooster Teeth thing, I just want to say, I am aware of, the bull crap that Rooster Teeth has, come out, and their very crap statement. I want to come out and just say I do not support Rooster Teeth anymore. I did not even know about the previous things that went on in the company just a little less than a year ago, apparently, with a lot of other really bad allegations. I highly suggest you look into it, because if you are supporting them, I feel like you will most likely change your mind after you know the things that have gone on. With that being said, I am separating the series from them. I'm here to just talk about the series. I feel like that can be hard sometimes, because you don't want to put any kind of support to people who are bad people. You don't want to fill their pockets with more money. So essentially, this is just going to be a long episode of me talking crap about how bad this spinoff series was. So if you thought this was going to be me praising it, good news, it's not. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in the company. I used to be a very big supporter, and yeah, I'm just very disappointed and overall hurt, because I used to support them, I mean, for a really long time. As long as I can remember, it was pretty much the beginning of, Red versus Blue and RWBY. So it really did hurt when I saw, the articles coming out about them, and I kind of found out in the weirdest way, because, I mean, again, I really don't keep up with a lot of this stuff as far as like PR and things like that, unless it is something big like this. So it was kind of a shock to me. And the reason I found out was because I saw Rooster Teeth's statement and was very confused about what was going on. And then I started doing some digging, and yeah, fuck them. Man, did that really pissed me off. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. So I just wanted to start off by saying, I do not support Rooster Teeth. I suggest that if you're confused about me even talking about this, you'd look into it, because if you are supporting them in any kind of financial way, I suggest you do a little research and figure out why you shouldn't. That's just in my opinion. If you want to give your money to them, that's up to you. But in my honest opinion, they're not a company that deserves their fans' support anymore. With that all being said, this is me talking shit about how bad the spin-off series of RWBY Ice Queendom was. Something that I was very much looking forward to as a RWBY fan. I mean, you guys know I did my RWBY breakdown and theory series a few years ago. That's still one of my favorite episodes. So separating RWBY from RWBY Ice Queendom. So the original series is RWBY, and the spin-off series is RWBY Ice Queendom. So giving you a heads up, because there's going to be a lot of confusion with that. Just wanted to clarify that from the get-go. So when I found out about RWBY Ice Queendom, I was super stoked, and obviously got twiddling away with my fingers into the depths of the internet, and did my little searching. I'm sure you guys have seen that Gabby Hanna meme where she's like typing away. That was me. Like, where she's like typing away. Anyway, meta. Like, just, so I was typing away, trying to figure out what the fuck this series was going to be about, because I was so excited, because I was like, RWBY is a series that totally deserves like an anime adaptation. It translates so well. I feel like it's totally one of those series that obviously is not a Japanese anime, so it totally gets the pass, kind of like Avatar, Teen Titans, Boondocks, like they all have the art style and totally follow that same like format of like a good anime. And so when I saw that it was getting like an anime adaptation, I was so excited because I was like, this is gonna be like beautiful. The art style is gonna be like so good. Man, was I let down. But let's just start off from the get-go. When I found out about it and I started doing my digging, I couldn't find shit. I could not find shit. I found articles talking about how there was going to be a spin-off series, but nothing that said what it was actually about. And I was like, okay, maybe they're trying to keep it, pretty secret until it comes out. Maybe it is just like a, what's it called? Brain. Or like a remastered version of RWBY where they just do like a remake essentially, kind of like with Hunter x Hunter where they update the animation. Or, I mean, I'm going to use this as the example because this is what the first thing I thought of. Sailor Moon Crystal, that was essentially like a retelling of the original, but bad, which is exactly how this was for me. Like RWBY Ice Queendom, to me, did not make a lick of fucking sense unless you at least saw the first season of RWBY, which is exactly how Sailor Moon Crystal is. And I'm gonna talk shit because I am a huge Sailor Moon fan. If you knew how much of a I have the original DVDs, VHSs, like I'm a huge fucking fan, okay? Like I loved that shit. That was the first anime I ever saw and what got me hooked. And it holds a very special place in my heart, but that does not, remove the fact that Sailor Moon Crystal is bad. And I have not seen it since the original, like, first season of Sailor Moon Crystal when it originally released. But in my opinion, it did not make me want to watch anymore after that. The animation was so bad. It was a mix of 2D and 3D animation, but to me, it was not an improvement upon like the original animation. Man, this is gonna age me. Do you guys remember the toy Betty Spaghetti? Like where she had like the really bendy arm. Anyway, that's exactly what they fucking look like in the 3D. God, they looked so bad. And I've heard that they improve upon it like a little bit in like the later seasons after that, but from what I've fucking seen, it looked bad, okay? Like their transformations looked bad. They looked like aliens, which technically they are, but even still, like not pretty aliens, like not twinkly, sparkly, cute aliens. They were like aliens, like like take me to your leader, aliens. And I really just did not like the art style. And I mean, granted, I guess they were doing something new at the time. But it was bad. It was bad. And for me, Sailor Moon Crystal, the reason it flopped for me was because, I mean, again, I was a huge fan and I saw all of the original, all the movies, have all the, so I've seen it multiple times. Both versions, like the original 90s Americanized version and the English sub. So I've seen both. So I know the differences and I know how it's supposed to be. I also read the manga growing up. Like I know the fucking story. So to preface that, it makes absolutely no goddamn sense if you don't watch any or read any of that. Like it was so fucking confusing to me, like even watching it, because I knew that was not how the story was supposed to pan out. And they essentially like squeeze in 2 to 3 seasons of Sailor Moon into Sailor Moon Crystal, just the first season. And it completely ruins any like character development or any of the story that slowly builds up that to me is actually very needed. Now, don't get me wrong. Every 90s anime has way too many fucking fillers. Like that's a duh. But some of those fillers were actually pretty vital to the story and character development. So to me, a lot of that was like just swept away and made already cringy moments that like, I feel like everyone as a Sailor Moon fan wants to forget, but like we know is like in the story and it's canon, it's a thing. Which is like Chibiusa essentially like liking and thinking her dad is attractive. That was made 10 times worse in Sailor Moon Crystal because they skip all of the facts of like her trauma and like getting manipulated and like her forgetting who she is and just like, no. She's fully aware of what's going on. She still thinks her dad's hot and it's 10 times worse. Anyway. So that's essentially to me how like RWBY Ice Queendom was, because if you did not see RWBY, it made no sense. They like throw you into these characters and expect all of this character development that happens throughout like three seasons to just one moment, and like you're supposed to understand it and accept it. Because when I saw the first episode, again, they released the first 3 out of nowhere, like early. And so I was going into this like fully high hopes, expecting great shit, because I saw that, you know, they released the character designs and they looked beautiful. So I'm thinking the entire anime is gonna look like that. Absolutely the fuck not. Because one of my favorite fight scenes is that first fucking fight scene where, you know, Team Juniper and Team RWBY like become those teams and work together to defeat those two Grimm, like those two giant Grimm monsters. And to me, it got so watered down, and they like completely fucked over Team Juniper, because they have like such a cool moment as a team too. And like they showed John's leadership role like super early on in RWBY. That completely gets scrapped. By the way, there's gonna be a shit ton of spoilers. So if you haven't seen this, like either of these series, just like, if you're cool with spoilers, listen on ahead, because maybe I'll talk you out of watching this shit show. But interested in watching the original, you know, like, so with all that, spoilers, fair warning. So in the original, they do an amazing job of character development, with both teams. And so this one, to me, they totally fucked over Team Juniper, who actually is very vital, like early on in the series. And it just makes no sense to me that they like completely like push them to the side, because they need to have their character development along with Team RWBY's to understand what happens later on. Because if you don't have Team Juniper, you really don't have the strength of Team RWBY later on, because those characters also help shape Team RWBY and vice versa, you know? So they completely fuck over some of my favorite characters, which especially is Pyrrha. Pyrrha Nikos is still, to this day, one of my top favorite characters in RWBY. Again, spoiler. She does not last in the original RWBY series. She passes, and that, for me, is a moment that they hinted way too early on in this series. They show a glimpse of that so early on that, to me, it would take away from the moment, because when Pyrrha dies, it is such a shocking moment. I mean, you have a sense that she's going into this battle and willing to risk everything in her life, but the way she dies was not how you expect her to die. I mean, she literally gets like obliterated into dust. And RWBY, seeing her very close friend die, awakens her true power that she does not know she has. So if you don't have the buildup of Pyrrha and her horrible, sad, traumatizing death to RWBY, if you don't see that, then it's not going to amount to RWBY's like character development, or John's, because John, in like his insecurities, does not notice that Pyrrha actually has feelings for him, because Weiss has shut him down and made him feel so little about himself that he's not worthy of anything better. That this girl, who actually is like phenomenal and like everything he would really want, and is like beautiful, kind, funny, likes him for who he is and everything that he is, even though he's not like a strong fighter or anything like that. She just likes him for him because he met her not knowing who she really was. She felt like a person, and that was the first time she felt like a person. That character development between the two of them also is vital to Jean's character. So if you don't have a good story for Pyrrha, you don't have a good story for John or RWBY. And so that pissed me the fuck off, because they start hinting off within like the second to like the, not even, it was like the 5th episode that she's gonna die. And you're like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, because this is very important. Like, and it just pissed me the fuck off. I'm like, why are they hinting at that so early? Like, it should be such a shock to you. Like, it hits you so fucking hard in the original, because they don't start hinting at it until like literally like 2 episodes before she actually dies. Like, it is like, she is supposed to be the strongest character. Like, nothing is supposed to touch her. she is essentially like All Might, in like My Hero. She is untouchable. She is unfucking beatable. And that's what makes it such a huge, like, crushing moment, is because she shouldn't have died. And she should have been this very strong, loved character. You know what I mean? Kind of also, again, like Rengoku. He is this very strong character, someone that should not have died. But because he was doing it to protect everyone else, he risked his life to protect thousands of others, Same thing with Pyrrha. She was like, I'd rather die than everyone else die, because she realized the magnitude of this danger. And she kept it away from everyone else to protect everyone else. So in that moment where they hint at like Pyrrha dying super early on, I'm like, you're taking away such a good character and her development, and like this very unexpected moment. And not just that, they hinted at so much other shit too that's like way later on that doesn't even happen until like season 5 or 6.
It's like they replaced the character growth or development for Team Juniper with, we're going to give you all of Team RWBY's season 4, season 5, season 6, like hinting at that kind of stuff. It's like they replaced good character development for future characters' backstories that we don't need right now.
Exactly. And and they did it in a bad way, because they introduced something completely different into the series that was not in the original series at all. And that was this completely new character and a completely different arc, which to me took away from that character development. While it did introduce a new cool dynamic that could fit on with the story later on, that's not the issue I had with it. Why the fuck did it take up the entire season? It took up the entire fucking season, and it really didn't need to. Let's just start there. Because this character, while they were interesting, and I actually really did like the idea of like a dream character, it does fit in well with like the story and, the fairy tale aspect of everything.
It was good for John, and that was it. Not the rest.
Exactly. It to me, it made more sense for John to have that little mini arc, because again, his insecurities had helped build up on that. But then when it took over Weiss, yes, it does create that good moment for Weiss to see some of her, insecurities and all of that in her upbringing. But that already naturally happens in RWBY. So, and it happens over a progression of a couple seasons. It's not all in one moment, which to me takes away from her and RWBY's friendship. Again, this whole arc took away from good character development that is already naturally progressed in the original series. So, for example, they show very early on that obviously RWBY and Weiss do not get along. They butt heads instantly. Not due to RWBY, but because Weiss is so, what's the word I'm looking for? Arrogant, entitled, privileged, and is completely unaware of her world and her privilege, because she's grown up this spoiled rich kid who is also traumatized from obviously like shit parents.
Naive.
She is very naive. She's completely, she's got complete blinders from the rest of the world and what's going on around her. She's not made aware of it at all. She's been kept in this bubble of rich world shit, And here in comes RWBY and Blake, who point out how, or not even RWBY. RWBY is like completely unaware who the fuck she is, but Blake comes in and calls her out on said bullshit. In turn, like RWBY and her have this conflict because they had this bad misunderstanding. And so she hates RWBY essentially from the get-go because she found her annoying, naive, and like, who are you to not know who the fuck I am, essentially. Again, that entitlement. And, Weiss is just completely unaware of like who she really is, because she's had to be someone else for her father for so long. And for her company, her father's company's, her family's company's like legacy. She has to be that person. She has to be the golden child. And so you take away that, like, if you take all away of like RWBY Ice Queendom's, like, Weiss's shit, it again it was just, in my opinion, done so poorly because they kind of rush like her and Ruby becoming friends, which doesn't happen very quickly, actually. And for me, what gets ruined is like you see this natural progression of Weiss coming to terms with the fact that, oh God, everything I've ever known is a lie. And it is utter bullshit. And man, I am an entitled little shit. To just getting boiled down to, I mean, because essentially she's racist against the Faunus, because the Faunus is another race. And it's all based off of what her father has told her and like essentially what has affected them, her family, and their money. In other words, a really shit take, Weiss. A really shit take. You're basing it off of your entitlement, your money, your privilege, when this is affecting an entire race of people that you're essentially trying to commit do mass genocide with. Like,
And she's in a bubble. So all her perspective is that one perspective, which is why when she goes to Beacon Academy and meets Blake and everybody else, she's introduced to other perspectives, which is why she gets called out on a lot of that.
exactly. And with that moment of like her natural progression, she builds not only a good relationship with Ruby and realizing that Ruby is trying her best to make this a real good team and everyone to like get stronger and to understand each other. And she, that natural progression happens when she starts to realize that not everything she thought is actually how it is. She's starting to realize from other people that, oh God, her family's company has caused a lot of problems for people. And with that, in RWBY Ice Queendom, what they do essentially is she figures this all out because of some bad fucking dreams. So in other words, not with the characters at all. It's her like dream interpretation of it. And they also, in my opinion, leave out two very vital characters, which are introduced early on. It happens in like season 2, I think, or late season. I can't remember. It's gonna drive me crazy. But they talk about them, I believe, if I remember right, in season 1, which is Crow and Winter. Crow is Ruby's uncle, and Winter is Weiss's sister. And you realize they have history together. And again, there were characters that they left out to me that actually have a much more important role throughout the entire series than they give them credit for. Example, Ozpin, who if you've seen the original series of RWBY, the entire story surrounds him. There would be no fucking RWBY if he wasn't a character. So the fact that they just touched on him in like 2 scenes with like little to no interaction whatsoever, it was jarring because they literally introduce him in the first episode of RWBY, and they have a conversation of her coming to like Beacon Academy. But in that moment, I can't even remember if they acknowledged this good enough in RWBY Ice Queendom. I mean, I binged the series. It was bad. But in the original, he points out, you have silver eyes, which if you know RWBY, is very, very important to the story. And they kind of touch on it in RWBY Ice Queendom, but not as in depth as they did in the original. Like it was kind of like brushed over. Like in the original, they make sure to really emphasize that, like, you have silver eyes. Like the way he says it to her, it's so like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, and it makes you think about that moment, and why is that important? Like, you have silver eyes. Like, it's not a common thing, obviously. And again, they just do such a bad job with this character development. And with this new character, while it introduced a cool new dynamic, it should not have taken precedent of the entire season. And it took away such good, like, moments that happen later on. And they also don't really touch on Nora and Ren at all. which again have such a sad story. And they show them early on too, like their engagement, and that, you know, Ren's kind of like always looking out for Nora because she's kind of reckless, and Nora's always like bugging Ren, and they have this very playful, like brotherly, sisterly kind of thing, but then you realize it's deeper than that later on, and that they like genuinely like love and care for each other. And it's actually a very sad moment when you find out their story. And again, they just really fucked over Team Juniper in this. They really did not show any of their stories at all. And again, early on, they show Jean's insecurity because it is vital to the story. Because again, if he did not, you know, meet Pyrrha, if he did not have any of that character development, he would not be able to grow later on in the series and unlock his semblance. So all of this bad pacing, bad character development, completely changing the story to the point where it took away from character development and introducing new dynamics that, again, could have been left out. Some of it, I think, was cool, but also should not have taken precedent over the entire season. But now I'm going to get into the animation and the music. Oh my God. So I was so again, rewinding back to me watching the first episode and me loving like that fight scene where Team Juniper and Team RWBY are taking on the, you know, giant Grim, you know, the scorpion and the bird, whatever. In that moment, you see each team become their teams. And it is so important to the rest of the series. Like, I feel, again, they brushed over this. And to me, that is still one of the most bad, as shitty as the animation was in the original. It did not even compare to how shitty that this one was in the spinoff. I mean, even with like the original series, the animation, while in the first like 3 seasons was not like top tier, the fight scenes were fucking phenomenal and they did not look bad. This one, it like, the best way I can describe it is like in Seven Deadly Sins season 3, the fight with Escanor. If you know the fight, you know the fucking fight. That fight is like so built up in the manga and everything, and I was so excited to see that shit like get animated. And it literally looks like if you were to like old school like comic books, you know, where you would like flip a page back and forth kind of a thing, you know, and like see the back and forth. That's how it looked. And damn, was that disappointing. And that's exactly how it looked like in RWBY Ice Queendom. It was just so badly paced, so quick, and it just looked bad. It looked so bad. And the music in RWBY, the original series, is fucking phenomenal. And it adds to every fight scene. It adds to the build up and everything. And it fits so well with the story. And that was like ripped away from this spinoff. I get so amped up at that fight scene every time I rewatch it because the music that kicks in, it's like snap, 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 like instant, like it gets you fired up. And oh, man, it just was such a letdown. Like I was like, after we finished that episode, I look over to Justin, I'm like, did that not hit the same? Like, did that disappoint you? And like, he kind of had to like think like, what do you mean? I was like, it did not have the same kind of momentum that the original had.
It was underwhelming, like for me anyways. Like in the moment I was like, okay, cool, knowing that there was a difference between it and the original. But like when you called it out, it's like that's when it really kind of hit me. I'm like, you're right. This is just kind of boring, honest. I mean, it wasn't boring, but it was like,
you be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, they brushed through it. It was a cheapened fight scene.
Yes, again, the pacing was bad. They completely like brush over this. And again, I cannot stress this enough. If for the pacing to be bad in an anime now that has 25 minutes for the entire episode, the original RWBY series, their episodes were like 7 to 10 minutes. So for them to like fuck that up so bad and get the pacing bad for that, it's like, how did that fucking happen? How did you fuck up something that was originally like 7 minutes and they jam-packed those 7 minutes with like good pacing and animation and character development? How did you fuck that up?
And content.
It just, it didn't make sense. And then I said, okay, it's the first fight scene, whatever. And then I realized, no, that was the entire series. Like, all of it was bad. They didn't have good music to get you excited about those fight scenes, because RWBY's music is like heavy, it hits, it's like guttural, it's really good. It just really took away from me that like very like first moment where you see them as their teams, to the point where it took me out of the series. You know what I mean? Like, it took me out of it for a moment. I was like, huh, okay. And I knew that for me, probably nothing was going to compare to the original. I knew that. But this was just such a bad interpretation of the original that I couldn't look past it. It took away so much from the original, and for me, it's just sad to see that something that is so loved and was so supported, and man, it just was a disappointment.
Well, I mean, and that's also the thing where it's like we had something to compare it to. That's for sure. But at the end of the day, though, somebody that's coming in brand new to it, like our friends, it was off for them too. So it's not just us knowing that, you know?
Yeah, my best friend and her fiance, they watched it, and they got back to me. And again, we were watching this as it was coming out, so there was no way for me to like warn them until after we saw the episodes. Like, don't watch this because it takes away from the original. And they got back to me and they were like, we hated it. It made no sense. And I'm like, no, no, no. You're right. It didn't make any fucking sense. This is coming from like a hardcore fan who has the book, who has, the figures, who like really loves the series, who has been with it since the beginning, and was very disappointed. It is not a good representation of the original series. It takes away from it, in my opinion. And it just really, it made no fucking sense if you've never seen RWBY before. And to me, if you have seen RWBY, it took away from it because, again, it would drop shit so early on that shouldn't be in there, but then also would leave out things to me that are very important early on, that it took away from any kind of character development for potential future seasons of the spinoff. And I don't know how they can even like salvage it at this point, because clearly it's going in its own direction to steer away from the original. But even the fucking food fight scene was watered down. Like even with the updated like animation, like that's a cute scene because it's essentially the last episode of the first season. And it's the last moment where they get to be children. Because and it's said at that moment too, like after the food fight, like Ozpin doesn't make a big deal of it because he's like, let them be kids for now. And you don't realize how heavy of a statement that is until you watch later seasons. That he was so right in that moment, that this is the last moment where they will get to enjoy being children, because they are training to be essentially the saviors to protect this world. But what you don't realize is that Ozpin knows that they are what should be the protector of the future. That if they don't succeed, that there is no future. And he knows that. Because again, this whole story revolves around his fuck up. And that's what's so jarring about that sentence that he says, is that this is the last moment they get to enjoy life, essentially. They will never have this kind of enjoyment ever again, because a lot of heavy shit is about to happen. They are gearing up for a war, and you don't realize that how impactful that moment is until way later on, that it's true. They don't get that moment ever again, to just have fun and play, because shit starts gearing up in season 2 instantly about the magnitude of things. It's sad because I feel like it just gets, again, like everything, the pacing was so bad, everything gets just like brushed over. The things that really are important. It really disappointed me as a fan because I was so excited to see that it was getting an anime adaptation. And I was like, while I know that there's obviously going to be limitations, the original had limitations. So I had very high hopes, for what they could do with possibly a better budget, better animation. And I'm like, how the fuck did you fuck this up so bad? It's something that literally had 8 seasons worth of and books of information for you to work on. How did you fuck this up so bad? Man, if Rooster Teeth like had a lot of involvement in this, that just like to me, it's like, why would you say fuck you to one of your most popular series? It's like, I want to know if they're like, yeah, it's good enough. What?
They really had a chance to really make something awesome there because, like how you said, it was kind of a revamping of the original, what we thought that it was going to be. Instead, it was just kind of a readaptation of the original, which tried to do way too much, but at the same time did way too little. And with the original RWBY series, it was a lot of like you talked about earlier. I mean, the episodes were like 7, 8, 9 minutes long, and there was a lot of information in them, but not to where it felt like it was too much. And there was a lot of action scenes. So the pacing, although there was a lot coming at you, the pacing made it easy to keep up with and enjoyable. The Ice Queendom series, it was just a lot of information, and as I think as we've discussed, if you don't know any of it, it it doesn't even make any sense of why they're even bringing it up or even talking about it because there's things that they talk about that has no backstory or history in the episodes so far to where you would even care about half the shit that they're saying, which takes away from the ultimate grand story of it all, which they rushed season 1, but they didn't rush season 1, which makes it weird to say. I don't even know at this point.
Again, I think it's because they introduced that whole new dynamic with this new character that it completely overtook the story and kind of puts the rest of the story to the side, the real story. And again, it just didn't make sense. Like, it didn't make sense, man. Like, the pacing was just god awful. Again, like, I mean, the way you said it, it's perfect. Like, they put too much in one thing, but too little throughout the entire thing. It just utter disappointment. And again, for me, I think what made the fight scene so much worse is because in the original series, the music was so good and like amplified those moments that even though you knew it was not the greatest animation, it got you pumped up and excited because it still looked good for, subpar animation. Like thinking about fight scenes, how hard they are to animate, they looked pretty fluid and well done. And this was a shit show. I mean, oh my God, like what a shit show. And honestly, it was really hard for me to even watch the last episode. Like I was like, I know it's gonna be the food fight scene if they are trying to follow the original series somewhat. And I was right; it did not measure up to the original, which because it was such a cute scene. It's like literally just happens out of nowhere, and to me, it was out of place in this series because they had introduced this whole different dynamic and it overtook the whole story. So it's like, why are they having this food fight scene? Like, it didn't make sense. It took away from it.
Like just celebrating the fact that your friend came out of a coma that she was put into instead of, you know, and like you touched on this earlier. It's like, why are you going to make her dream sequence basically her character development over the course of what in the original took over well over 3 to 4 seasons? And I think she's even still fights and battles with it because changing your entire life's opinions and thoughts and vibes does not happen literally overnight. It takes time, which original show touches on that. I can't remember if you and I were just talking about this or if you mentioned it earlier in this episode.
Mhm.
but how our friends started watching it and their opinions on it and all that. So I can't remember if that was just us talking, but anyways, I felt bad for them.
Yeah, we did touch on it. Because when I talked to our friends about it, they were like, "This was one of the worst series I've ever seen," and I was like, "Oh no, you're right." Like I instantly like backed them up on it. I was like, "No, this was a horrible representation of the series, and I highly recommend if you liked any parts of it, it's because they came from the original series. Because they were telling me about the parts they did like. I'm like, yeah, that was in the original series. Like, and they were like, well, what about this? I was like, yeah, no, not in the original series. It was trash. Like, I'm telling you, all the parts you hated were not in the original at all. Any parts that they did enjoy were parts that were in the original series. And that's what was so frustrating about talking to them about it is like, no, if you saw the original, I'm sure you would enjoy it because if those are the parts you liked, you'll like the rest of the series. This was such a bad interpretation of that. Hello, Ham. Sorry, we got interrupted by Chewy. You just want to be here? Hello, my little Ham.
Big little ham.
We've given him a new nickname recently.
He's walking through everything.
He is walking through everything. We've given him a new nickname recently, and he really likes it. It is Little Lord Ham. We've been watching a lot of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon recently. So he is the first of his name, protector of yams, producer of Squish, and overall goodest of boys. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Sorry. Got sidetracked. Essentially the parts that they did enjoy were actually in the series, the original. And so I tried to urge them if they did like those parts to try to give the original, a shot because it was better. And overall the series was just utterly disappointing and I had hoped for something so much more when I found out that it was getting a spinoff. So many things I thought would have been this spinoff were not at all what I was expecting in the actual spinoff. I mean, I thought maybe they're gonna, delve deep more into like the Schnee family's history based off of the name. I thought it was gonna be like a prequel, essentially. And then when I saw the main characters, I said, well, maybe it's like, I really didn't know what the fuck was gonna happen. It was so badly advertised and like talked about before it even came out that I had no real like idea of what was gonna be, what it was even gonna be about. And then when I saw it, it was just the biggest fucking letdown. And man, overall, if they are to like improve upon this, if they do continue it, to me, it's like they just have to barely acknowledge the first season and just go with the original. Like you have the story there and like fix the mistakes that they made in this first season. I mean, because again, they would have to fix the pacing. They would have to, bless you, Chewy. They would have to fix the animation for the fight scenes. They'd have to improve the music. Overall, they would really have to completely revamp everything and redo it, essentially. And they're not gonna fucking do that. I doubt it's even gonna get a second season because I'm pretty sure it did super poorly. Based off of the things I've heard, no one's really enjoyed it. I haven't talked to anyone that really liked it. And if you did, I'm assuming it's because you didn't see the original and you just have no idea of what the actual story is. It just was utterly disappointing. And as a fan of the original series, it left nothing to be desired. Not little, nothing. There was it did not make me want to watch it. I mean, and the only reason I kept watching it was like, well, I gotta finish it because I've started it. and I know I'm going to want to talk about this on the podcast. So that is the only reason I kept watching it, was because I was like, I know I'm going to want to talk about this. And it was a waste of my time, honestly. It really sucked.
It didn't even leave you wanting to watch the original. Like, you finish it up and you're like, why did I put that kind of time into it if you finish it up?
Yeah.
And it's like, then you hear us talking about how much better the original one was. You're probably like, I don't want to watch it anymore because it put such a bad taste in your mouth. I say you should definitely get a better taste in your mouth by watching it.
Yes, like, I mean, I really had to try to convince my friends, and I still don't know if they're gonna watch it, because I feel like this puts again, like you said, put such a bad taste in their mouth. Like, how could that be better? You know what I mean? Because it, again, was so different from the original. I cannot stress that enough, that it took away everything about good that was in the series, and it just, I don't know how they would be able to improve upon it if they did continue it. I really don't think there will be a second season of it. And another thing that confuses me is that if it is all about Weiss, why wouldn't you have just done a spin-off series of Weiss rather than calling it RWBY? It could have just been like something like Schnee, her last name. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just didn't make fucking sense to me. Like, why would you? Because the whole joke about RWBY, the way it's spelled, it's their initials. Team RWBY, it's their initials. That's how they get the team name. Same with Team Juniper. It's their initials of their first names. It just so happens that RWBY is their leader and she is the main character. So it's kind of like a inside joke kind of a thing. Like, oh yeah, no, we meant to do that. Like a nod to the main character while also giving it a deeper meaning, you know? So it's just, the whole thing didn't make any sense to me, why they would have focused so heavily on this new dynamic and one of the main characters, when in reality, her character development is over a span of time, not within the first season. It happens within like the first 3 seasons. And even still, like Justin said, it continues throughout the series. And all of them, you know, they didn't show off my girl Yang enough, and that pissed me off because she's my fucking favorite. And they didn't show any of her character development either, because they really just showed her as like some dumb blonde, and that's not what she is at all. She's so strong, and it's just, oh man, it really disappointed me to see how they portrayed characters I really loved and watered them down to like nothing, all to focus on one of the characters and not even do it well. Like, I feel like if what they were going for was to focus on each main character, like through each one, that's going to take way too fucking long. 2, you're not going to see how they grow together in that way. Like, if you try to focus on each character, also then, why would you name it RWBY Ice Queendom if it's not going to focus surrounding Weiss? It makes the whole thing doesn't make sense. I feel like they were trying to do a one-off with this, because I don't know why the fuck you would call it RWBY Ice Queendom if you're only focusing on one character. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, they would have to change the name every fucking time then, because obviously it's not going to make sense later on. It just, the whole thing was bad. And I highly recommend, if you did want to watch this side series, this, you know, spinoff, you have to watch the original. It will not make any fucking sense. But I urge you to just not watch it. It was such a bad rendition and bad storytelling, bad pacing. Again, I cannot stress how bad the pacing was, especially, like I said, the original had like 7-minute episodes for the first season. Like, when they finally condensed the first season all into one, it was less than an hour. You know what I mean? Like, that's really fucking hard to do. So, and like, you could binge the first like 2 to 3 seasons in like 2 hours. That's how short the episodes were, and they still were able to do such good character development and pacing in those short episodes. Like, after each episode, you're like, oh, like, I want more. You know what I mean? And that I never got from this. I was never excited to see the next episode with the series of the spinoff. It was just so bad. And again, I don't know how they would fix it if they do have a second season. I doubt they will get a second season. I will eat my words if they fix all of their fuck ups in the first season. I mean, you guys know, if something is bad and I call it out on its shit and it's better, I will take back everything I said. I have no shame in taking back a wrong opinion. 100%. Like Chris Pratt. Like, I was like, who doesn't like Chris Pratt? Turns out he's a piece of shit. Okay? 100% agree with you guys. Didn't know any of that other bullshit before I said that. 'Cause, again, don't really keep up with celebrities and their bullshit. Anyway, but you guys quickly called me out on the Chris Pratt thing. And I was like, whoa, didn't know any of that. Sorry, guys. That was an old episode too, though. But so I guess a lot of that shit didn't happen until... Anyway, doesn't matter. I will totally, like, change an opinion if I realize I was wrong and the first time I stated it. But I doubt that's going to happen with this. I don't know how they would fix it in the second season. I don't know what they could improve upon other than just following the original and, like, just giving it a remastered, vibe where they just update the animation.
Which, honestly, when we first heard about it, that's really what we thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be RWBY, but instead of computer graphic up and all that kind of stuff, it was anime style, to the T. With some revamping if needed and all that other kind of stuff, but not what they did. Not what they did.
No, it was not at all what we had expected. And when I saw the name, I was like, okay, Ice Queendom, like, so is it gonna... I was just very confused. Again, the advertising on this, there was none. Like, really, there was no previous information. I could not find anything when I was trying to research about it. I found like 2 articles talking about it. And even at the end of those articles, they were like, so we don't even know what the fuck's going on. So it was just like nothing was told to us. And just don't watch it. Don't watch it. Fuck Rooster Teeth. Like, just, I again don't know how they could improve upon it. I mean, what did you guys think of it if you did see the series? I mean, because for me it was utterly disappointing. What had you have hoped for? What would you hope for if they were to improve upon it? And, like, if you could, what would you keep? Which for me obviously is all the things in the original. And what would you have changed? Because for me, I actually liked the addition to the new character, but it should not have taken precedent of the entire season. That to me was completely unneeded. It made no sense why. Like, I think it was great that, again, like we said earlier, that they introduced it for Jean, but to completely obliterate all of Weiss's character development and squeeze it into one season, it was just trash. I don't know how they could fix that.
I mean, it was a waste, honestly, because I don't know. It's like if they changed Ronald McDonald tomorrow, and then McDonald's like forces you to enjoy it, whoever it would be. I don't know. Anyways,
Ronald McDonald, that was the the
first thing I could think of off the top of my head. Improv master here. But no, that is exactly how it was, where it's just like, here's a little bit of this, and now we're going to give it to you nothing but this, and whether you like it or not. And the whole Weiss's change, that is honestly one of the best, how they rushed Pyrrha.
Mhm.
That's one of the redeeming qualities about Weiss, is you see her growth throughout the seasons.
Mhm.
And by just changing it into a simple dream, like they take that away to where it's like, now you didn't like her, and now the next day you're supposed to like her. And it's kind of the same thing, where it's like you're just forcing this character who I haven't even had time to understand why she might hate people.
Or why you should hate her, or why you should like her. They kind of force it upon you.
Yeah, look, she's a good person now. Okay, but she's still not. She still has a lot to learn.
Also, a dynamic I did not fucking understand that they stress so heavily is, like, obviously in, like, the dream sequence, they kept stressing the coins, when it really didn't amount to anything later on. It was like, okay, so they can all leave back on one coin. What the fuck was the point on stressing over them all keeping their coins? It made no goddamn sense. Anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't that close of a call.
I was so fucking confused by that. I was like, okay, so why did you stress so heavily about these coins? Like, oh, you're gonna get stuck in the dream. You're gonna die in the dream. Oh my god, but again, it all amounted to nothing. It really made no sense. And again, a dynamic that was not in the original that just completely took away from the story and like anything that made sense at all. So if they do have a season 2, I will watch it. I hate that I'm doing this, but I will watch it just to see what the fuck happens. And if you guys want me to talk about it, if it's shit, if it's good, I'll eat my words. Whatever. And as always, it's not easy being geeky, guys. Thanks for listening to my rant. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to check us out on all of our socials. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and now YouTube as well. So make sure you check us out. Links to everything on our website, noteasybeingeeky.com. Thanks again for listening, guys.